think about your lifestyle, John. Again, people flick on a switch and their lights come on, and they don't really think about where that energy comes from. If that energy was to go, if that energy was to break down, then essentially it would be, we measure in a matter of days how long it would be before we'd have social unrest, because it keeps all of the other systems afloat. And you're right when you say energy is the economy, because it goes way beyond just electricity. And this is what people don't seem to understand. We are doing the easy part at the moment. We're changing the electricity grid. Well, that's the lower hanging fruit, and that's proving to be very difficult. We've got to work out ways that we can make steel, cement, ammonia, which feeds half the world's population by getting nitrogen out of the atmosphere through that Haber-Bosch process, which essentially feeds half the world's people, and plastic, which is ubiquitous in the environment. But without energy, we can't run our economy, and without our economy functioning, we can't have any sort of economic or national security. And in future, I would suggest that one of the problems that we're going to have in Australia is the ability to make the things that we need to defend ourselves as a nation. So it ricochets all the way through every part of your existence. Energy is life. Literally, your standard of living is measured by the amount of heat that you get to waste, whether you see it or not.
You've written very competently about the technical causes of the massive shutdown of electricity production in Spain and Portugal. And interestingly, it was triggered by too much sun. As you just said, many people are installing their own solar, and it feels good. They tend to discount how much it's been subsidised both by themselves and indirectly by taxpayers, but they feel good about it. In reality, if you end up with too much of it, it becomes nearly impossible to stabilise the grid. It breaks, and then it's nearly impossible to start again. They're difficult things for a layman, I think, to get their minds around.
Yeah, this is part of
you explain in layman's language what happened in Portugal. It's happened in South Australia, I know, and why it would be even more catastrophic here, because we could not call in power from our neighbours the way they could, much of it, by the way, nuclear power. We might come to that in a moment, to restart their grid. In the meantime, they had no power, which is worse than expensive power.
Yeah, and so essentially, like, the way to think about electricity is it's almost a magical system. Essentially, what you need is to match supply with demand, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can never have too little supply, because what happens is that the grid works on a system of 50 hertz, so sort of 50 cycles a minute. And if you go to a big coal-fired power station, the heartbeat of the system comes from those big spinning wheels that we've had in the system. They create what's called system inertia. They stabilize the system. And if there is any kind of shock to the system, then when it hits those big spinning wheels, they might shudder, but they keep spinning. So that's the thing that keeps the heartbeat of the system going. Wind and solar don't function like that. They don't create that kind of system inertia. And what we're seeing with particularly the explosion of rooftop solar is we're getting too much energy in the middle of the day, and those big spinning wheels have to shut down because we can't control that rooftop energy. So we have to start shutting down other parts of the system. What happened in Spain was there was way too much solar energy in the system and not nearly enough ability to stabilize it. So when there was a shock to the system, it essentially ricocheted all the way through it. It got up to there's an interconnector with France, which Spain connects through to its nuclear energy. But what happens is if that part of the system gets overloaded, that shuts down to protect the other side of the border. So inside this island of the Iberian Peninsula, there was not enough stability in the system to keep the lights on, and the entire thing collapsed. Now, when it does collapse, you have to be able to restart the system. And again, you can't restart an electricity grid with wind and solar. You need something that delivers what we call dispatchable power, something that burns fuel. So you have to start building that from that base upwards, and that's what you do. And then you build it outwards, and you set up the system security again, you set up the system harmony again, and then begin connecting all the other bits and pieces to it. Again, these are highly complex bits of machinery that we know how they work, that we've been working on them for the last 150 years. Unfortunately now, we are trying to retool the system, essentially rebuild a plane while we are flying it with systems that we don't know whether or not they will be airworthy. That's the risk that we're putting into the system. So the two things that are going to happen with renewable energy, or wind and solar, as night follows day, is that the more that you get in the system, the riskier the system becomes and the more expensive it becomes because it has to be so overbuilt. So it doesn't do any of the things that people said it was going to do. It makes a less reliable system and it makes a more expensive system. And given you have to build so much of it, it's not green either because we're churning up the landscape to put up wind turbines and solar panels.